Hello, we're going to start Flutter today. So we're going to be in Unit 9 and looking at the basic Flutter Hello World kind of, apps. We're going to create our first Flutter app and set this up. So hopefully you've already installed Flutter, the SDK and the Flutter plugin in Android Studio. If not, go back to that lesson and work on that. So we're just going to start by making a basic Flutter app. So let me walk you through that. So I've run Android Studio here. If you have the Flutter plugin, there should be a new Flutter project. If you may not see it there, you may have to go down here to select it, but we want to do a new Flutter project. So that if you've already have a project open, you can do File, New, but don't do New Project, do New Flutter Project. So again, it should be a new Flutter project. So I select that. Then I have to make sure I switch down here to Flutter by default. It should have the SDK path where you installed your SDK, the Flutter folder here. If not, just click this and find your Flutter folder and link that in. Mine's in the Documents folder. Mine's actually in a separate drive because I need it on the D drive. Okay, so that should be generally filled in automatically. We give it some name now. We're going to do a hello world. Now this has to, we'll come back to this. This has to be lowercase and stuff. So I'm going to do it wrong here, and then we'll see the error for this. This is where it's going to be stored in Android Studio projects generally, and that's fine. The organization is like the package, so I usually do CSS dot like your last name or something like that, or the class, something like that. Now, it is going to create an Android project and possibly an iOS project. I would skip the iOS stuff for now and then switch the Android project to Java. Now, generally, you will never have to touch this Java. It'll be created for you. But again, if at some point you want to go in and tweak it or something's wrong, since we've been looking at Java, it's easier to have this in Java than Kotlin. Okay, so leave Android checked, uncheck iOS, switch this to Java. We've got this set up, and so the only thing now is when we try to finish this, it'll give us a problem with the last name. So we're using a language called Dart, and like a lot of Linux-based systems, the operating system generally is not case sensitive. So we've got to be careful. In general, we have to use all lowercase on things here. So I'm going to call this Flutter, and use the underline character is a good rather than a space character. So that's what I'm going to call it, Flutter Hello World with underlines here. And then it should create it fine. It'll take a while for it to get set up and open up as a project. Okay, so once it opens up in the project, it might ask that, say that it recognizes a package or something and want to switch this to an Android package. Generally, you don't want to do that. Sometimes that does it automatically. And so just watch up here. This should be in project view and not Android app view. Yeah. Let me open this up. So what happens here is that the Flutter project contains our code and all that stuff, but it also contains a full Android project within it and a full iOS project within it, possibly. So sometimes Android Studio will recognize that Android project and just want to open that up or display that. So just make sure you're in project mode here. And not Android mode. And then when you look at it, you should see everything. Now, this just opens up a README, which actually has some nice links to some tutorials and stuff like that. But we're not going to need to look at that right now. But under the lib, so under the this top folder under lib, that's where all of our code is going to be done. Where Flutter apps are in a language called Dart, and so the main one is called main.dart. So we'll open up that, and that's where we'll do most of our starting program. And it starts with an initial set program here. It's nice, and it has some nice long descriptions of what this does, but doesn't. It's kind of useful to read through those. It does kind of, with all these long comments, hard to see. So this is the same code here without the comments, and we'll return to this in a little bit for this. But this is the basic Flutter app, and so we're going to try to run this and see how it works. So I plugged in my phone so it shows up here. So you can also run in a browser, which is possible, but generally it looks better on a phone. If you have a if you're running an emulator, you may have to start the emulator up manually. So you may have to go to Tools, AVD Manager, and then run your emulator here. Mine's not set up to work here. And get that up and running, and then that should display here. Now we've had some trouble with some of this stuff getting emulators to run and or phones. So get in contact with me if you're having trouble, installing Flutter or getting it to run. So, but hopefully you can just plug in your device or run your emulator, select it here, and hit this run button. Now the first time you run it, it's got to rebuild or create this Android app and the iOS app if you have that there, and it takes a while. So it'll take a couple minutes. So, excuse me. Once it's built the next builds and stuff are much faster. So just be patient with it. You'll watch, it'll see running Gradle task assemble debug down here, and this will take a while. So I'm going to pause this video while this goes. Okay, so now it's finally run. It did pop up this little comment that Flutter supports hot reload, and we'll see that in a sec. So if I pop up my phone here, we can see that it's just a simple app. It's got a title bar, it's got a text and a number here, and then a button, a floating action bar button here. And I can just click the button and it should increment this. All it does is that at this point. Now, one thing that did mention hot reload, and one thing I will mention is that often we'll be able to change things here, and it should reload right away. So let me see if I can move this over a little bit. So I'm gonna go down and find the text for where it says you have pushed a button so many times, and I'm just gonna change this to uppercase. And put some other spacing around here so we can see it stand out. Now once I change that, hopefully it will hot reload and it'll update this. It might take a sec or two, but it should update this text screen over here. So now you see it without me compiling it or anything, it did a hot reload and pushed the changes over here. So often with simple changes here, those will automatically be updated to your app, so you don't even have to recompile. Now there are times when you'll make changes here and they not, so you can hit the run button again, and that'll just do a quick update here. Now sometimes when things just aren't seeming to update, you just have to hit stop and run again to reload the whole app. So that's your choice. But often, again, what's nice is that you can just make changes and wait a couple seconds, and then it'll be updated here for this. Okay, so we're going to simplify this app some. So I'm going to scroll down here. So we're going to do a simplified Hello World app. This code has a lot of extra stuff as far as stateless and stateful widgets. We're not going to worry about that. So we're going to actually just talk about this section here and just do this part. So let's go up to the top here. So the first thing we do an import, and we always do this import here to bring in the Flutter stuff with what is called the material app stuff. We can see a little bit more about that later on, but that's the general app layout materials. Then we have a main function here, main, and what we're doing is we're running an app. So we're going to run app, and we're defining a class my app, and so this is where we're putting our doing our app. We create a new class called my app, and it extends stateless widget here. It needs a constructor, and again, this is boilerplate. You always do this. You always do a build widget. So all of our components, I guess, of our app are going to be widgets, basically. So we'll be working a lot with different types of widgets here. So we'll call build, which will return a widget. So this will be the return type of this build. So the first thing it's going to do is call return and use the widget app, material app widget, which is our main kind of framework for our app here. I'm going to delete some of this stuff. I'm going to delete this comment here. I don't think we need to worry about this theme stuff right now, so I'm just going to delete that too. So it starts there, bracket, the bracket ends there. I'm just going to delete that here. So I'm just going to have the title, change the title to Hello World. And we'll talk about the home. Right now, it's for the home, it is creating this whole new class down here. Um, but we're going to replace that for home. We're just going to stick in a simple text widget. So we're going to get rid of this here and all this stuff below. So I'm just below the My App class. For now, I'm just going to delete all that. You can actually leave it in and just it won't be called, but I'm just going to delete it to make it simple. Okay, so this is what I have here. I've got my main, and it calls my app. My app extends stateless widget. I have a constructor, and then I have a build method. The build method returns a material app, which is the main framework for my widget, for my class. I set the title, and then I'm going to set the home part, which is the main part of the screen here. And generally, so how this works is that when we have widgets, we have the widget name and then parenthesis. Oops. And then as the different parameters in there, we often have a value or key for those parameters, so like title or home, and then a colon, and then the value they are. So like here, this is hello world is going to be the title, and then a comma, and then another parameter by name. The default parameter doesn't have to have a key here, but a lot of them will have a key things. So we can have a value here, but we can also often have another widget here. So I'm going to stick in another widget. I'm going to use the text widget here. And then in that, it's going to just have one value. Hello there. There. So again, this is a text widget, parentheses, and then one value in between here. The text is the default parameter, so I don't have to have one of these colons in front of it. I mean, a key and a colon in front of it there. But that's the general setup for it. So that is basically this format here. And again, sometimes we can put these on different lines. Sometimes you'll see them broken up this way here. The interface will automatically put in comments that'll match the end of the key, so that you'll know that this is the end of the text block, this is the end of the material app widget block for us. And again, you can put these smaller ones or whatever on one line if you want. So I'm going to go back to that. Now, if I switch to my phone and run it, I don't have to run it again because again, it should be doing live updates. So it's doing live updates. Now, since I've deleted the framework and stuff, it's like taking over the whole screen and trying to write hello screen, and it's writing the hello there, this text right at the top of the screen in its default font here. So it's very big. So just putting that up here for that. So a lot of our programming then will be working with these widgets and putting widgets within widgets and stuff like that. So these are some of the common widgets we'll be using. So we've talked about the material app widget, and again, you can click on these to bring up the documentation for them, and sometimes this documentation is somewhat useful. And this is a convenience widget that wraps a number of widgets that are commonly required for material design applications, and that's our general app format that we'll be using that Google has built here. Similarly, the text widget talks about a text widget here and shows some examples of it, text, and then the text here and a comma, and then it shows some of the different characteristics. You can say align center or overflow, like what happens if it doesn't fit. You can use ellipses, or you can specify a style here with this. And shows you some different ways, and then it gets into there's rich text versions and text bands and stuff like that. Don't need to go into now for that. Let's talk about the center widget. So again, this is another widget. So often we want to surround this. So again, if we have this, I'm going to move this to a down one. If we have this text widget here, let's move back, and we want that to be centered on the screen here. How would we go about doing that? So again, what we'd want to do is create a center widget here. And then put this widget inside of it. The center widget's going to have a child thing and do that. So since we do that frequently, one thing we can do is we can just click on this, and there's a number of short ways. If you hit Control Space, it brings up a shortcut key of some of the features, but I guess that's not what I wanted. I wanted to right click on here and choose the Show Context action, Control Alt Enter. And this will let you wrap this widget. So I'm clicked on a widget, and you can also highlight a couple widgets if you want, but I'm on one widget now. And I'm going to show context action, and I'm going to wrap this with a center widget. And it has taken the text widget here, and I'm going to break it up into different lines here. And it has put this was what I had before, and it had put a center widget around it for it. So it kind of does that automatically. So again, I right click on it, show context action, then you can wrap widgets around these things, which we'll do fairly regularly. Now again, that you don't have to do that. You could just type in center here, and then put this widget inside that widget. But you're going to need center requires a child thing. So we want to convert this to a name attribute, and it'll put that in there as child. And again, if you want, again, with all of these fields, like even this text one, if you want to know if you can put in more characteristics, again, you can hit Control Space, and it'll list all the different parameter or keys that you can put in, or additional settings you can or parameters you can set for that. Is Alt Space for that. Okay, so now we have our app. I'm gonna break this down into a couple different lines here a little bit, like this. So we have our material app, starts there and goes down to here. Inside that we have a home, puts it on the home screen, and then we have a center widget, and it has one child, which is a text widget here. I'm going to add a comma in here just because I'm used to. For formatting, we often put the trailing commas here, so then if we want to add another widget here, we can for this. Okay, and I don't see, why isn't this up? Oh, there it goes. Okay, now it's updating, so it's centered here. So this is the basic idea, is that we will be putting wrapping widgets inside widgets for this. So if I look back over here, so these are some common widgets here, and let's do the column widget here, and then we'll go on to the scaffolding widget. We'll talk about that. So this center widget takes a single child, but some widgets will take a set of child. So let's say in our app we wanted to have a couple different text things here. We can't, center only takes one child here. So we can change the center to a column widget, and now it doesn't have a child, it's going to have a children class. So it's actually going to recommend I change that to children. I'm going to do that here and change it to children. Now it's going to recommend, it's going to need this in a set of brackets here, basically an array of children for this. So this is how I kind of set this up, is column children colon bracket bracket, and then the text here. And again, if you want to set this up more automatically, let's say you just had a text widget here, like that. Okay, get my parentheses to match up. Okay, so if I just had a text widget, I can right click on show context, and I can wrap that in. Oh, I thought they had a column here for this. So let's put this, yeah, that's a container. Okay, I thought there was a shortcut for doing a column right there. Sorry. Okay, let's go back and do this. And we're going to switch this to children. and then specify our array and move this inside that array. Okay. And again, now we can have multiple children. So we have a column, and then we have children, we have a bracket, and we can specify comma separated values here. So now I can have a couple different children here. Hello. 2, hello, 3, for this stuff. And again, eventually this will be updated here, and if it doesn't update, again, you can hit the run button, which will resync it here. Now, since I don't have a center widget here, it's putting these up at the top, but it's showing them here. Now, I can put like a center widget around this or things like that, so we can wrap widgets within widgets within widgets, which is what we'll often end up doing to do different objects here. Okay, so that's the two couple standard formats of the widgets. Often they might have a child or children here, columns and rows. So like the column here has a children. So again, they're showing a column here with children. This is just a declaring that it's going to be widgets after widgets. You don't necessarily need that, but here's the bracket for that. And the bracket goes back down to here, and then they list they have a text, another text, and here's a more complicated widget in here, which is an expanded widget with a fitted box widget inside, which with a Flutter logo within inside that. So it's a widget within a widget within a widget here. But again, that's all within one of the children of this column widget as we go. And again, so some of these have nice examples of these different characteristics here. We can also do things like put in icons here. So if we want to have a row of icons for this shows that we have a row and it has some children. And here's our bracket for our array of children going down to here. And then here it's using the icon, 3 different icons for that. So if we wanted to change one of these to an icon here, we can easily change that to an icon. And we can say there's a number of built-in icons that are available. What's the wording for that? Icons, not icon, icons. Dot. And then here's a bunch of lots of the icons that are there. So I can, and again, it kind of shows what they look like on the right. So maybe I want a airport shuttle picture here. And so again, under our children, we can have anything as long as it's a widget here. So, and then hopefully this will update. I don't think you can see the icon very well in there. So sometimes with some features here, we may have to surround them with some other formatting to get them to work, and we'll talk more about that later. Okay, so that's the basic layout, our sets of widgets here. And again, we'll talk about these card widgets or size box widgets, kind of setting a framework to help put other widgets inside them. Okay. The next thing we want to look at is scaffolding. This still doesn't look like a very good app. Here we don't have a title bar. We don't. We don't have a main field here. We don't have like any buttons down here. No menu at the top. No pull-out drawers here. We can add that all manually, but a lot of times we will use a framework to kind of fill that in, just kind of like we'll use the Material App framework initially. And so we're going to add a scaffolding app framework here. So there's a scaffolding class here that will add code for it. The documentation actually shows the same code that's in the original app here. Scaffolding with an app bar with sample code, and so it has a app bar, which is the top bar, a body, and a floating action bar. So this is the floating action bar, this is the body, and this is the at the top here is the app bar stuff. To show you some other examples of scaffolding, this little article talks about some other examples here where scaffolding sits in the whole list of widget types, all the different things you can specify. So generally we specify a body, often we specify an app bar, but there's floating action bars, there's navigation bars, there's things, and it will actually show you some sample apps here with different things, including a pull-out drawer that you can set up easily and things like that. Okay, so we're going to do that here. So I'm just going to take this home code and grab that. Sometimes I don't have indenting working quite well. I think it goes down to here. Okay, so here I'm going to take my home code down through the column code and paste it in here. Oh, got a little bit too much there. Okay. So now here I've got my scaffolding. Inside the scaffolding, I've got an app bar. I'm going to move that in a little bit more. And I've got a body as my two main attributes for this stuff. And then now let's see what this is going to look like on my stuff. So again, once it's loaded, this is my app bar, and I have a title at the top. Nice. And it follows a thematic color that's set. And then this is the body of my app here, the body of my app, and I'm doing a center, and a child is going to be a text widget, and I'm specifying that. Now, I'm also specifying, so let's break this up. I'm going to go down here and see. So the text widget has a hello world as its main parameter, but it also has a style parameter here, setting this to a headline mode. And again, we'll look at that more later, but that's how we get a nice formatting for that. So again, that's what scaffolding does. It'll let us set up stuff. Now, if we go back to our program now and look at the top app here, there's a scaffolding widget. The main part of this body, this build widget here, returns a scaffold. Here it has an app bar, and then inside the app bar it has title, which is a text widget. It has the body, which does a center, and the child is a column. And then we specify the children in an array, and so we have two text fields within that stuff. And there's also a floating action bar, and inside that there's a child, which is an icon, which is the plus icon idea. So this was the original app. So now maybe you can begin to understand this. Now, just to note, next class we'll be looking at this stateless and stateful widgets. So we are doing a stateless widget here, and a stateless widget cannot receive input, can't have buttons and stuff. They can't change based on the user input. So generally we start with a stateless widget, but we will put a stateful widget inside of that, and then our program will be in this stateful widget here, and we'll have to do some special things for managing that stateful widget stuff. So this still might not all make sense, your first app that default that was created here, but we'll talk more about this at the next class.